Welcome back to Sista Brunch, the podcast all about Black women and gender expansive people thriving in entertainment and media. We are now in our fourth season, you all. I can't believe this. We encourage you to go back and listen to our previous guests on Apple or Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcast. And we also want you to find ways to uplift and encourage these incredible women and gender expansive people that we have had in these last three seasons, as well as this incredible fourth season. Also, if you've got questions about the entertainment and media industries, we want to hear your voice, and we might actually play your voice on a future episode or on our social media. You can leave us a voicemail at 424-587-4870, and we can't wait to hear your questions and share them with our guests. We also want to share love for the listeners who leave us reviews. So this one is from Takeum, who says, yes, love this. Can't wait to hear more episodes. Informative and entertaining. Everyone should listen to this. We can't agree with you more, Takeum. And we appreciate that so much. We always say our podcast is by and about Black women and gender expansive people in the industry, but it's for everybody because it matters for you to listen to these incredible women's stories. So thank you again for your reviews and for subscribing to the podcast and rating us and leaving us a great review. For rating us and leaving us a 5-star review. I'm your host, Fanchon Cox, and today's guest is the fabulous Marissa Nance. She's an advertising vet with over 30 years of experience, and she's made it her mission to create pathways for BIPOC communities to be heard and to have a seat at the table. In 2019, she left Omnicom, where she ultimately In 2019, she left Omnicom, where she ultimately became one of their first Black female managing directors. And she left to launch the first and only minority and female certified media agency, Native Tongue Communications. Built on the shoulders of her decades of success, Marissa and her team advocate for clients while she continues to protect, advise, and champion countless women and people of color in the media marketing industry. Welcome, beautiful Marissa Nance.
She sounds interesting. Can you introduce me?
Yes, I will. Listen,
everybody.
Well, listen, I met her on a plane once. We sat next to each other on a plane. We were going to the same place. This is literally the same event, but we happened to sit next to each other on the plane. And I think it was you who figured out, are we going to the same place?
We're going to the same place. You seem just fabulous. I'm going where I think you're going. Yes. Yes, you just smelled fabulous.
The ode to D'Angela Proctor is it was. Right. It was the ode to D'Angela Proctor.
That's exactly what it was. I love that. Hi, thank you for having me. This is just wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. You do so much. Your words mean so much. And the impact and intent behind what you do is felt. It's felt by so many. So I want to thank you. I want to start by saying thank you for me. Thank you for everyone. You are kicking butt and we appreciate you.
Whoo, you stop. We're so glad to have you. We are honored to have you on. And especially because you are in a part of the industry that we haven't talked a lot about on the podcast, which is kind of almost, you could think of it on the back end. We talk a lot to screenwriters. We talk a lot to directors and producers and executives who are doing development, but you take these projects and you get them out into the world and then you connect with companies. So I can't wait for you to share all your knowledge and just inspire all of our listeners. So what we usually ask our guests to do is go back as far as you want to from the beginning of how you eventually became this incredible woman with Native Tongue Communications, running your own company. How did that happen?
Yeah, I tell folks my life has been a series of fall downs, fallbacks, and in some instances, a little bit of failures. I always, and to a fault, I represent Cleveland, Ohio, and HU Howard University.
Go.
And a lot of folks may not realize that Howard was not my first choice, but it is the beginning of all things almost for me. I mean, even my husband, I credit, if you go back far enough, to Howard University, but it was in a sense a fallback for me. I was very clear I wanted to go to NYU. I wanted to be a screenwriter and I wanted to go to NYU and I wanted to make films. And my father, may he rest in peace, said, I'm never sending you from Cleveland to New York by yourself. You can't do that. And I was a very spoiled daddy's girl. And I said, well, of course, he's going to let me do what I want to do. And he didn't. It came time to apply, and I kept waiting and waiting. And he wasn't going to pay for the application. He wasn't going to he wasn't going to support it. He was adamant and resolute in that fact. And the last available school that I had to apply to was Howard. They had the latest application date. And so I applied, and nothing against Howard, it was on the list.
Wasn't on,
and I could apply. And so the irony there is, I'm not going to tell my age, but it is something. And when I was at Howard, DC was known, the moniker was the murder capital of the world. Yep. So he wouldn't let me go to New York. I ended up in Washington, D.C., Chocolate City, which at the time, I mean, it was a significant time in Washington, D.C.'s history. And it changed the trajectory of my life in so many ways. The job I got in New York City after leaving Howard, I had the intention of taking a fellowship in writing. So I wanted to become a filmmaker, wanted to write movies. And I won a spot in a fellowship that was going to happen in Los Angeles. And about 4 months before graduation, 5 months, I got this letter, and a letter, literally typewritten letter, there's my age again, that said, we regret to inform you the fellowship had to be disbanded because the mentors were stealing the mentees' ideas and lost. It was writers of color, and not a lot has changed, huh? And so I was backed into this corner. I didn't know what I was going to do. And so I called my father again. I told him, Daddy's girl. He said, well, this is great. This is a sign that you should move back to Cleveland and work at State Farm with me. And I love State Farm. They have been an on again, off again client and a resource to me and my family for decades and decades and decades, but I didn't want to do that. And so he said, I will give you enough money for 1 month and you can go to New York and try to find a job. Because that's what I could. You can't go to LA. He's like, I'm not sending you to LA. You can go to New York. So first you can't go to New York, but I went to DC. Now I can go to New York.
Okay.
And I had enough for 30 days and I took the Peter Pan bus. And at the end of those 30 days, I had 5 job offers.
Yes.
And the last woman who gave me a job offer went to lunch with someone, a woman who I credit all the time her name, Judy Magnus Long, then was her name. And she said to Judy, I'm going to offer this young woman from Howard a job. She reminds me of you. And Judy said, I remember her. She was in the ad club. You can't offer her a job. I'm going to give her a job. And Judy,
you had a bidding war.
Judy called me on the phone, right on the wall.
Yes.
Hit a cord. She said, come down here. And I went down on a Thursday and I started work that Monday. And that was at an ad agency. Okay. And that's how I ended up in advertising. And then through a lot of, as I said, kind of missteps and failures, as I went through, I kept changing the course of my career there. So I was at the same holding company for 30 years, but I had 4 to 5 different incarnations of who I was and what I was to myself and them. And I think that's important, growth. So it sounds to some people, you look at my resume, stagnant, right? I left at 30 years in one holding company, but I had 4 different titles and 4 very distinct jobs. And each of them I kind of created myself. Not kind of, I did. And so at the end, they came to me and they said, we think you should have your own agency. You've been an intrapreneur here at Omnicom. You've created so many different and new revenue streams and opportunities for us. Why don't we do those together? And I had, going back to Howard, I had that, I have this in my brain. I think they implant a chip while you sleep when you go to Howard University, and it lets you think, you're this brave, right? You're got this level of braveness, and maybe it's stupidity, I don't know, or a balance of the two. And I said, okay. I mean,
Ooh.
30 years I've been working for someone, now I'll be an entrepreneur. And that's how in 2019 I launched Native Tongue Communications, the first and only that I know of both minority and female certified media agency. And that's really, I hope, in less than 3 minutes how I ended up here.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you started off being a screenwriter. I love that, and I think that it drives home the point that we make often, which is like, if you're a storyteller, there are many ways that you can be involved in the industry and in entertainment and media, and it doesn't have to look like the traditional things that we all know immediately. That strength comes through if you're a gaffer, and but because you're a storyteller, you're constantly thinking about, how do we tell this story better? And I can't think of anyone who does that more than you. Just even conversations we've had where you're like, I'll tell you something I'm dealing with, and you're like, Fanchon, look at it this way, and you tell it to me as a story. So that piece, do you ever still think about screenwriting, or think about getting back to that?
I do. It's funny you say that, and it makes me smile. It makes me feel warm and fuzzy, because I tell my team every single day, whenever you put pen to paper or use your mouth to articulate words, you're doing such in a narrative, and put a beginning, a middle, and end to it.
Yes.
If it's a text, if it's a tweet, if it's an email, if it's a Word doc, if it's a PowerPoint, everything has a narrative, a beginning and middle and end. Mm-hmm. And when you think about even life, but certainly how you communicate in those terms, I find personally for me, I get further along. People understand. You put it in a way that once upon a time, oh, then there was a big bad wolf, and they lived happily ever after. And we're almost conditioned as humans to think in that way, to think in those 1, 2, 3 steps. And so from text to tweet to email to document to PowerPoint, I don't care what you're saying, however boring you think it is, if you create that sure narrative around it, people will be engaged, because they want to follow that red thread all the way through to, do they live happily ever after or not? Or not? What's the ending? And so, one, thank you for that. It makes me feel fuzzy. One of the reasons I took the job at BBDO at the time, and then became OMD at Omnicom, the president of BBDO at the time was a man named Phil Dusenberry, and he had not too long before that won an Oscar for The Natural.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, if he can get to where I want to go and be the president of an ad agency, there's got to be something here. And I remember we talked about that balance of, is it bravado or stupidity? I don't know. Like 2 weeks in, here comes, young Marissa. Went up to the top floor to the woman who, managed his world, who I still know, she's wonderful. And I said, hey, I'd like to talk to Phil. And she literally was like, am I being punked? Like, who are you?
Who are you? You just,
I'm don't you know, I'm Marissa Nance. I just started 5 floors down. You want to know who I am? And she was, I think, tickled by it. I think she was, no, who did that? She was so tickled by it. She said, okay, I'll get time on his calendar. And it took a couple weeks, but I got on his calendar and I sat with Mr. And it continued to be, every time I got called into his office, a thrill, to a certain extent. Everybody's who they are, and I'm sure he was not a perfect human being, but it was really interesting to me, because he was clear that, and that's where I started to think about narratives. He began thinking about narratives in 30-second increments.
Wow, there you go.
And that's one of the first
things.
Which,
my goodness, let's talk about how useful that is today with the TikToks and the reels. Like, that 30 seconds is everything. And tweets, like you said. Wow.
And he told that to me in 1991. He said, I began thinking about storytelling and narratives in 30-second increments, and that's hard as hell. And if you can do that,
that's a gem.
And then it became 15 seconds, right? So you have commercials, ad units that are 10 and 30 and 15 seconds. So if you can do that, writing a movie, easy. Easy. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that, but easy.
It's the seedling for sure. It's the seedling. So I have to point out we've learned already. We've gotten some amazing gems. Gem number one: go to an HBCU. Let's just be real, because clear what that's done for you, and so many of other of our guests, and so many Black women, gender expansive people working in the industry have gone to HBCUs, and we see it more and more. Obviously, we've got a vice president, right? So we see that the fact that y'all come out of there without a whole lot of imposter syndrome. Some of y'all are like, what is that? Right? So it's this empowering way for you to feel like you coming out with agency, something that a lot of us Black folks don't. I mean, if you go to a PWI, you don't get it all, right? You get mostly like you don't belong, or you here because of your, because you just got here because of your identity. Incredible important lesson number two is narrative. Everything is narrative. Everything is a story. And then lesson number three, challenge yourself to tell that story in 30 seconds and 15 seconds, and then you golden. Marissa,
hit it. I've been TikToking and Instagramming and Twittering, since 1991, when he said I had to learn how to do this in 30 seconds or less. So
what a gift.
That's where the foundation of where I came from. I wanna flag something. It's so interesting you bring up, and please keep me on track. I could talk to you all day long.
Oh, me too.
But you brought up the HBCUs, and I nod my head and I bow down, and I feel blessed by God every day that I had my Howard experience. But it's interesting. I've been working with my nieces who are of college age now, not at HBCUs, and so I've also begun to think about what is that missing element in the recipe. Right? You can make a recipe and it calls for chives, and you put in green onions instead, and they're not quite the same, and you can taste that, right? There's a little dissolve, right? Paprika versus, Creole seasoning. Who knows? And community, you touched on it, and I feel like it's that sense of community. Because of that, you then build on a foundation, you create the strength, you create the perseverance, because you have that community to back you up when you are. And I tell people this all the time. I say the title of my memoir would be The Only Chip in the Cookie, because I spent 30 years pretty much as a chip. There were others, and to this day, they are part of my community, those who I've engaged and worked with throughout the years, certainly at Omnicom and other places, but more often than not in the room, I was that chip. I was the only chip in that cookie. And they are chips in many instances, my nieces. And so finding ways, if you're not at an HBCU or you didn't go to an HBCU, think about community. Is that where maybe you're looking for some backup, some reinforcement, some support? And how can you build that? This podcast can be that for you. It's a stepping point. Fanshin starts with reviews and the chat, and there's a community created around this podcast. So please, if you're listening or watching and you say, but I didn't go to Howard, I didn't go to Spelman,
I didn't go either. I went to, but you can still.
You have done, you have created a Howard or a Spelman-like environment here. Good. And I want anyone listening to know that community that you may not have is here. And the fact that you're here and listening means you're taking that first step to build that for yourself and for others. So,
we couldn't have any better endorsement than that coming from Miss Marissa Nance. Thank you.
Well, I'm in marketing and advertising every once in a while.
Good. Yes, I know.
But it's true. It's
that's
the best marketing and advertising is rooted in truth, and that
community is everything. We had a YouTuber, Halise, on. She's on this season too, and we talked about the quality over quantity in terms of the followers, because of course there's a lot of pressure to have whatever number of followers or likes or whatever or views, and she's someone who's uncompromising in her content, and she's like, I'm good without, I don't need the 100,000, because the people, the community that she builds, the support that she has is everything. Now, the truth is, I'm learning, right? Especially as I'm building my production company. We need, I need to get monetized. So like, I'm also like, I'm on these platforms giving them free content, right? And keeping people on the platforms. So it's constantly that balance, right? Between like, both quality building the community, but also getting, kind of, we talked about white guilt during the when George Floyd was murdered, and like, do we want that kind of follower? I was like, yeah, if it gets you monetized, that's fine. You know what I mean? Like, if that's part of their guilt. But I'm going off on a tangent, because what I hope to do, as much for me as for our listeners, is to understand what a day in the life looks like for you at work. What do you do when you get up? And obviously you've got a team. We should just share that Ms. Nance came on with an entourage, and we love that. We're like, she's a badass. She got her entourage. But what does a day in the life look like for you? And then your staff that's working with you, especially younger folks who are listening, what might they do to enter into, what you do in the industry?
Yeah. So I am certainly, it's funny you say that. So, Entourage, our agency, we refer to ourselves as very scrappy. We are small, scrappy, and scalable. The three S's. We are small, scrappy, and scalable.
I like
We're
it.
about 15 to 20 strong on any given day.
Yes.
Depending
Okay.
on the work we have and the revenue we have coming in, I'll be frank. And so anyone you talk to has a purpose. And so that's twofold. When we talk purpose in native tongue, we talk purpose in terms of what do you do and what can you offer, but also what can we give back to you to fill your purpose needs, right? So you want to work for a purpose, and thus you want to have a purpose for your work. And that's what we try to instill in everyone who's on the team. You want to work for a purpose, but there should be a purpose to your work. So when you come in, if you say, I want to contribute so that what people of color and communities of color see, hear, and how people think of them is right and spot on and authentic and articulate, and here's how I can do that. And that's definitely how you build a place, not just at native tongue, but to me, a reasonable place anywhere in marketing and advertising. If you approach it that way, I think you'll be extraordinarily successful. Having a purpose to your work and work toward a purpose. I would say for me, and I think this is everyone, we have just come out of, and certainly for our lifetime and in many lifetimes, the one true global impact. No one on the planet that I know of and school me was not touched by what just happened with this pandemic. It was a global event, truly global event.
Yep.
World Cup felt like a global event. The pandemic was. Right? So how do you navigate a day has become a bit of a trick question, right? There used to be, prior to that, I would say, you could say, well, I wake up and then I do this and then I do that and then eventually I go to bed. I am someone who unapologetically is working hard, not just to maintain this business for myself, but for those who work for and with me, and again, those communities we service. Our clients know our clients are not our first and foremost objective. It's the communities we join with them to reach that are our first and foremost objective. And I don't want to fail them, then I don't want to fail the paying clients, and I certainly don't want to fail the team. So for me, and many folks will say, that's not self-care or healthy. My life has become a different clock. 24 hours for me is very different than 24 hours for someone else. And that's fine. It has to be what it needs to be when it needs to be that. So I oftentimes find myself looking at that pie and figuring out how to divide it and when. There are a few things I hold true for myself. I do try to stay somewhat healthy. Fanch and I, you and I were just talking before we started about my 100-year-old grandmother, and I just left her, and her spirit and her purpose helps drive her, and she tries to eat and stay and live healthy. She was visiting me over the summer, swimming in the pool, getting her laps in at 100. So
Wow.
it's about finding time for me. I get on the treadmill. I try to get the steps in. That's important for me. And that helps me decloud. A lot of us are
Yes.
very cloudy now. Um,
Yes.
and finding time to commit to at least something with someone I think I can give some benefit to, and selfishly they can give back to me, like this, is important for me on a daily basis.
Yes.
And it may not be as grand as this wonderful and beautiful podcast. It may be a quick call with my best friend in New York, or a text exchange with someone I
Huge.
haven't connected with in a while.
Okay.
But there's a mutual benefit that fills both of our cups. And I think
Mm.
that's an important part of my day.
Mm.
And then the work. It's not as sexy or glamorous, but I spend a lot of time sitting in front of this laptop doing PowerPoints and doing research and paying bills and doing the things that need to get done so that tomorrow is another day. So
Mm.
that's a lot of what my day entails.
Are you able to talk about any specific projects or brands, or ways that you've connected brands with projects? Yeah, what anything that you're not under too much of an NDA to discuss?
Two projects that I think would resonate with this audience that we're extraordinarily award-winning projects that we're extraordinarily proud of. Back in 2020, actually back in 2019, we created something on behalf of our Clorox clients with Essence Magazine or Essence Communications, called the Build Your Legacy Project. And as I was striving to become a Black female entrepreneur, something new to me after 30 years of work, I began to do research. I wanted to know more about my community. See, it all ties back.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is, and can be summed up, that Black female entrepreneurs, they are the largest group of entrepreneurs, growing group of entrepreneurs, and the very least supported and funded out of anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And that's shameful.
Yep.
What could I do in what I have and the resources available to me to help change that? And so we created the Build Your Legacy Project. And it was the very first grant or award specifically and only for a person identifying as a Black female. There have been many
Yes.
grants for Black people.
Mm-hmm.
There are many grants for women. There had never been a grant specifically for a Black female. And someone may say, no, what about this? And forgive me, that I know of, and certainly corporate funded.
Mm-hmm.
And so Clorox funded it, and it wasn't just 5,000, it wasn't 10,000. I say wasn't, is, it's $100,000. I mean, that's game changing.
Game
That's a life
changer.
changing.
That's operational budget for a
It's
small
a life.
business, right?
I unabashedly will tell you it is a life changing amount. We developed this on behalf of Clorox at the end of 2019 with the intention to launch at the beginning of 2020. And you know what happened in 2020.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All the more, I don't think there's ever a mistake for what happens. I believe that there are higher powers driving and guiding.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that we were able in 2020 of all years to have committed, because so many budgets fell apart. This
Yes.
budget was sacred. And I want to give a big shout out to Clorox. I want to give a big shout out to Pine Sol and Clorox. This budget, hear me say, it was sacred to them. And
Wow.
they maintained throughout what we all went through in 2020, that $100,000 grant and all that went in around it. And we were able to award that. And we had more than 500, 600 applicants. And some of the stories, and I get a little emotional, one woman wrote and she said, this isn't life changing, this is life saving, literally.
Mm.
I don't know that I would survive. I'm sick. We have COVID. I've already lost members of my family. I am alone. This is life. It's not life changing. It's life saving. And so it was wonderful to win awards and be acknowledged, but that you take home.
That's
right?
the purpose.
That
That's
you
when
home.
you talked about that purpose. That's the
that
purpose.
You take home. That is it. Another project, so that's one extraordinarily proud of and happy to have created and worked with and partnered with Clorox on. Another project we're currently working on is called the Armstrong Project. This is a little cuter, maybe not quite as Peanuts. Snoopy is a client, which is very fun.
I love it.
And Franklin Armstrong is the African-American peanut. We all love Franklin. We love Franklin. And how do we reinforce the commitment and purpose behind Franklin and what he can mean to others and us in our community? And so, again, you do some research. And I want to note we talk a lot about screenwriting and being creative and the qualitative traits one needs. It's a balance, it's quantitative too. In what I do, I have to, even though I don't like numbers and Excel sheets, I have to do the research. I have to find the statistics. I have to find the rationale behind what makes it important. And what we realized is, as of then and today, there are still less than 4% of all animators and illustrators are Black. Yet you've got hundreds of thousands of millions of young Black children engaging with the content that is being created.
Absolutely.
Not seeing themselves, and if they do see themselves, not seeing themselves mirrored in a way that's going to create a positive impact. Franklin can and will and does do that. And so we created the Armstrong Project, and it is a 6-figure endowment. It's not a donation, it is an endowment to Howard University and Hampton University, so that we can encourage, through scholarship, through mentorship, and through work study, young people to look at animation and illustration as a major, as something they can get into in college. And we've seen a double-digit increase in applications.
Yes.
I can say this is airing in a few months, so I think I can say, and if not, then I'll just be in trouble. We did so well. Not only have we seen that double digit, we had our first 2 winners, a winner from Hampton and a winner from Howard. And the program has done such incredible numbers and made such an incredible impact. A retail partner approached Peanuts and said, next summer, we want to have an Armstrong project in our stores. And so those 2 winners got to help design merchandise and collateral that is going to go in arguably one of the leading retailer in the United States. And we will have the Armstrong Project there. And everything you buy, a portion of that will be donated back to these schools so that we can encourage it. So it's self-fulfilling. So that is very also fulfilling for me. Self-fulfilling for the endowment, but fulfilling for me in being able to create something like that with our partners at Peanuts, who are extraordinary, and see it come to life and see it make a difference. So.
Oh my goodness. I'll quickly plug one of our episodes from season 3 with Taylor K. Shaw. She's the young woman who created Black Women Animate Studios. So this is a great, connection both to a previous episode, somebody who didn't grow up seeing herself in animation and was like, we need to do something about this. And she created her own. And I just love that. And speaking of roles that didn't lose but gained during the pandemic was illustration, animation, because you were recording it from a studio. You didn't have to write all the production. So many video productions shut down. Animation grew exponentially during that time. So, oh my goodness, I love it. Okay, I know you are a busy woman, so I'm gonna add a couple more questions in and let you go. But so we like to share either salary that you're comfortable with, the kind of income that one can make at entry level, kind of after a few years, and to where you are. And it can be obviously ballparks. And also, most importantly, what are some tips on negotiating the rates, the salary? Because of course, as you said, we don't get funded. So what can we do to at least make sure we're being paid what is fair for us?
Yeah, I can tell you now. So in the impetus and launch of my agency, the backstory of the agency, what I will add to it is that in the end, we actually ended up launching very unilaterally, autonomously. We did not launch in partnership. We launched in partnership, but not in financial partnership with a holding company. And so we've been, from day one, I'm very proud to say, cash positive. But for someone who's an entrepreneur, I went from earning what I earned as a SVP, whatever title it would have been at a holding company, to now CEO, but it's much less because I have to make an investment in my brand. This agency is representative of who I am and my brand. And so I may not get a new pair of shoes, but I can bring in the right consultant or contractor who will make the agency smarter and better, which makes our clients smarter and better, which makes our communities smarter and better. And that's worthwhile to me. So I'll be very transparent and truthful, say, I'm not earning a lot yet, but who knows, tomorrow, someone
I know. You say who knows? I know, because of who you are. I know who you are, and your purpose, everything you've expressed, the amount of time and energy you've put into community, the skills that you have, the relationships that you have, and most importantly, as you said, your purpose, right? And you're showing that through the projects you're taking on, through what you're doing with your agency, is that so we know you can say you don't know. I'm gonna say we know you're gonna be bringing in the big
well I know someone will hear this podcast who is in a position of authority and the ability to leverage budgets, and I think that's the part 2 of your question. When you are working for someone or you have your own entity and you are looking to bring in clients, one thing I have learned is, dependent on the space you work in, is dependent on how you can evaluate what you'll get. And what is sad, what I have found is I happen to work and have made a commitment to working through communities of color. And that's the purpose and service that I bring. And that's not always most funded, best funded, first funded when it comes to corporations. They will say it is, especially after the few years we have gone through. They will engage an agency like mine to
around June 19th or so. They come
across, or even to do pre-work, or to give good thoughts, or to have feeler conversations, and then they will say, "And here's $1, and please be thankful for this $1, or we don't even have $1 for you. Thanks, but no thanks." So I have not been good. Not everyone's perfect. So I will note a fault of mine, which is I've not been great or good in navigating those waters. And my commitment to myself and my team in 2023 is to get better. And what that means and how we address it, because there has to be a way for us to have an equity stake in eating.
Yes.
In a seat at the table.
Yes.
Without feeling guilty, without feeling remorse, without feeling like we should take the crumbs and not a full plate.
Yes.
So that we don't feel like, well, we'll wait until you've eaten. We'll wait until you've cleared the table. And now whatever's left, these crumbs, let me sweep those into my hand, and I will graciously and gratefully, that's what I'll feed on. And so that's got to change. It's got to change, for me. And I know it can change because we, at Native Tongue, we have clients that believe in that. We have clients that see us as equitable partners, and they show that in how we are engaged and, frankly, how we are funded. And so every single day, and because I don't want someone to walk away and say, who are their clients? Because they're obviously terrible people. I guess what I'm trying to say is the clients we currently work with are the people you want to work with, are the people who have the right mindset. And I feel so blessed and appreciative every day to work with them. And I want to find more of those clients. It's the clients we haven't worked with who've done things like, we'd love to get your mindset, we'd love to get your ideas, now goodbye. So I guess there's a reason for it. There's a reason why we work with the Peanuts and the Amazons and the Cloroxes and the California Utilities of the world, and so many more, because they're just fantastic in terms of knowing and wanting and having a purpose behind how they reach these communities and who they work with, which is us.
Okay, 2 more questions. This one is, because we're filmmaker oriented, content creator, kind of producer oriented. Can you talk about what you might be able to do with a film or television project, like branding, or yeah? Can you talk about that?
Monetizing intellectual property is one of the hardest concepts to wrap your hands around, I have found. But once you get the hang of it, it's actually, I won't say easy, but a relatable and exciting to me way to earn a living. So when I was at Omnicom and when I spent my 30 years, I focused myself in what they call branded entertainment. And I will, again, unabashedly, that's my new thing for 2023. I will say, and I've been told, I probably in the top, there are maybe 6 people in the world who do branded entertainment or native content better than I do, period. Um, I'm really good at it.
But are they Black women?
No, 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 no.
So you do
I can't.
and let's be real, since Black women do everything better than everybody else, except maybe Indigenous women, I get right, then you actually do it better than they do because you have that on top of.
On top, right? I'm
But
fighting that fight. Yes, I'm doing it all while climbing the
while
hill.
exactly.
While climbing the hill.
But anyway, yeah.
But
Yeah.
but there maybe are, and
Mm-hmm.
and so being able to take a step back and objectively figure out how to monetize your work, your baby, is not easy. Once you figure it out, and you can find those avenues and figure out that narrative right in itself.
Yes.
Again, I think it can be exciting and it can be lucrative. So a few things. First of all, it is your baby. No one wants to look in a baby carriage and say, "Boy, that's an ugly child." I mean, you just no one wants that. Boy, your child is ugly. Who did you do that with? That is just, don't ever procreate again. My God, horrible, horrible. This is an abomination against nature. No one wants to hear that, and so the content and the creative that we make, the ideas we come up with, many times there are children, there are babies, and for someone to say, "I don't see it, I don't get it, I'm not aligned with it, I don't think it's good," it hurts, and we react a certain way, and that's very human. In order to, at least in the world I live in, monetize it and find ways to connect with corporations and clients so that they'll fund it, I think you do have to take a step back and become very rational in your child.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you need braces.
Mm.
Maybe I shouldn't put bows in your hair. Maybe there are moments when you just take that step back and you say, "This may not be it," and that's what you need to do. So be very rational in what you create and why. Approach it from one of two ways. This is my story. This is what I feel strongly about. This is what I'm passionate about. And then in the back end, here are the things that authentically and organically support it. I feel very passionately about animals. I've written a story about a dog that gets lost while the family is camping, and the story is the dog's journey back home, and they all live happily ever after because somehow, some way, that dog ends up back home. But how can I support it? I don't have the money to do this. Well, let's take a look. I've written something that I feel passionate about, and that is dogs and animals, and that's why it's so great. Well, dogs and animals need food. Dogs and animals need toys. The family's gone camping and is driving around looking for the dog. So what kind of car is that? What are the brands and objectives and items that fit organically, not forced with my story that I have told, that we can complement each other and do good together? That's one example. The other example is I just feel like I want to create, but I don't know what I want to create, how I could create. That's how, and I work in this a lot of reality content comes about, right? And so that's when you kind of do the reverse, which is, I feel like the airline industry is lacking, or the travel industry is lacking in reality TV, right? We've got a few shows, but not a lot. How can I create something that will support the airline industry, that will support the travel industry and the hotel industry? I'm going to come up with this really cool idea that I know supports those three entities within this industry. Well, now I can pitch it to them and they almost can't say no. It's an automatic yes because I've created this for them.
Tailor made. Ooh.
So there's two ways you can approach both. I hope enhance and support and engage your creative spirit. One is your true purpose, right? And then
But you
having
got to put some bows and some braces to make it look cute and attractive. Right.
Right. And then the reverse of it is what's their purpose and how can I meet them? So always, I guess, meeting in the middle for both. Those are two ways that I would tell people who want to get into it. You will make money. If you do those things, someone will give you $1.
Ooh, let's talk about the gems you just dropped. Oh my goodness. I feel like we gonna make some online courses with you and we gonna do a whole thing. Okay.
What a good idea. What a good idea. You should don't look.
Oh, listen. Oh, I know why we might cut that out, Sonata. Okay, last question. Ooh, because Sonata was like, wrap this up. Oh, and that was 15 minutes ago, but she knows. I can just, all right. Our last question for now, and we will have you back on because we're just scratching the surface. You are sitting down to a Sista Brunch with young Marissa. What are you eating and what is she eating? What are you drinking and what is she drinking? And what do you tell her?
Well, we're eating well, you know what? Here's the thing. Because she could afford maybe the extra 20 pounds she doesn't have, she's not carrying what I'm carrying. So she is having probably a French toast and a pancake. Nice. Along with whatever else. Mm-hmm. Whereas I have eliminated the French toast and the pancake, but I can't give up the cheesy eggs and, some kind of salmon patty because that's just delicious. That's my favorite breakfast. Cheesy eggs and salmon patties. That's the way to go. I just would not have the biscuit or the pancake or the French toast with it. And then in terms of cocktailing, she would have had straight champagne or mimosa. I have evolved in I will have straight champagne or mimosa happily or gladly, but I will not turn away a Bloody Mary. I have developed a taste where I can have Bloody Marys too. I don't know if that's me maturing or getting older, but I'll have a good, tasty Bloody Mary. Nice. And what I would say to her is, please, 3 things. 1, shut your mouth. Listen more. 2, focus and be realistic in your ability. You can't do everything. Stop trying. Okay. And 3, find joy. Find joy.
Thank you so much, Marissa.